All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome again to our Wisdoms Wednesday webinar. We are here today with Shannon Lewis. Shannon, we're very excited to have you today. You are the CRO and co-founder of Shantico Technology,
Okay.
managing member of Tiger Tail Advisors, and you have a passion project which is called For Everybody, which you can talk us about it later. We have also here Gabriela. Gabi, she's our Q&A queen and business developer from CTI, and Sia Mohi, our COO from CTI. How are you today, Shannon? We're going to talk about an amazing topic today, not only for women, but for everybody. And it's about menopause in the workplace. How are you, Shannon?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Just
Everybody,
thrilled to
we're
talk
super
about
excited.
menopause.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you, and we have a lot of questions from the audience. So Gabby will be the person actually managing that. So if you have questions, don't worry, go ahead and ask them. Gabby will just go through it during the webinar as well. So, with further ado, let's just start. Shannon, we have a lot of questions related to that. Tell us a little bit
Great.
more about yourself first in your journey. What led you to become an advocate for menopause awareness in the workplace?
For menopause in general, for female and women's health. For a personal story, I'm a very open book. So, by the way, ask me anything. I went through menopause, or found out I'd gone through menopause at 39. It was very sudden, and it was devastating for me. I was not prepared in any way, shape, or form. I'd gone to my doctor with Gabby and I were talking earlier, and I was like kind of warm at night. And I mentioned it to my gynecologist. She goes, "You're too young to be in menopause, but we'll do a blood work. We'll do some testing." And sure enough, came out that I was in full on menopause. I wasn't producing any of the reproductive hormones, which is estrogen, progesterone, or barely any testosterone. And the way I was treated was that my doctor threw me a pack of birth control pills. And the concerns that I had, and I had a lot to come to terms with, meaning I wasn't going to have children. I was 39. That was done for me, right? I had gained a lot of weight with my physicality. I was exhausted. I think I had about 70% of the 35 plus symptoms. Brain fog, cognition, which affected, my work life. So I had to be my own advocate. I couldn't turn to, there was no doctor I could turn to. So I started reading. And one of the books I was reading was Christine Northrup, about wisdom in menopause. And I learned all about hormones, which I had no idea ran your body. I was very ignorant to that. From that book, I was like, I don't need an OBGYN. I need a GYN, or I need some hormonal specialist. So I did some digging and found one in New York, and it changed my trajectory, and I was able to feel better and move on with my life. And it helped me. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm now 52, and a lot of my friends have been going through menopause and just experiencing the same, just feeling unsupported and not knowing where to turn, and not having the support system of the medical community, much less, at work. So I think for me, the more you talk about it and the more you normalize it, the better it is for everyone. Ooh.
I was muted, sorry. Thank you, Shannon. No, yeah, it's totally true. And then, so what are some red flags, in the journey probably that you were, living that indicated also in the workplace that is not a supporting employee experience? And on the flip side, what are some green flags that you will say, oh, this is a company that actually is supporting these type of things?
So from a work perspective, just by the way, I have a recruiting company. So this is how we are involved. I'm good friends with Jason Silver, and we're in a forum together, an entrepreneurs organization. But for red flags, I would say just not being able to discuss something that is an impediment to your working environment, right? You're having a problem when it's really affecting you in your job. And by the way, or your personal life, right? Because your personal life affects your job. Your personal life affects everything. So does vice versa your work. If somebody's not open to you're struggling with something and not wanting to hear you, I think that's a red flag. There's a lot of material out there. People who don't have menopause benefits in place. I think people who don't generally have benefits in place, or, I know they exist. I mean, not everyone has healthcare benefits, but I think that's kind of that would be a red flag. Green flags are, healthcare benefits that include HRT. I think a supportive work environment includes advocacy internally. Um, I think maybe it's a timeshare. Maybe you can work from home a couple days of the week. I realize it's not available to everyone. There's people in the service industry that's you have to be on site. But maybe, if you have uniforms, maybe that's something different. Maybe they be a different material. But there are a lot of ways. We're still in early days on this, by the way.
Shannon, like talking about like green and red flags, we have here a good question.
Yeah.
Is have you ever felt like you had to choose between your health and job performance?
Yes. Yes. Particularly when I was younger, when I was in a sales role, and my job is to close business. So I would put whatever I was feeling aside and do the job. I mean, for me, it was me getting on a plane and being gone Monday through Friday. Not always healthy for years on end. But, I'm trying to grow my business, trying to grow my company, and that's what I did. So the answer is yes.
Is that what helped you make the decision of starting your own company?
It's turned out better for me that I don't have to do that anymore, that I can hire a team. I'm just, at that point, though, I was also younger too. And, I'm older now, and I'm much more, not only do I run my own company, but I also have employees that, take over that role for people who have to be in person. But was it at the front of my decision making? No. But it turned out for the better for me.
Okay.
And what's one thing your workplace could do today that will make life easier during menopause?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
What's one thing your workplace could do today that will make life easier during menopause? Like the most important thing?
I think the most important thing is to have a supportive environment. Healthcare benefits notwithstanding, your mental health and physical health, but a supportive work environment where you can have somebody that you can reach out to in a confidential, supportive way.
What do you say to people that might be a little bit more, I don't want to use the word shy, but timid or reluctant?
Yeah.
Because that can't be a comfortable thing to talk about. And this is coming from somebody who's never going to go through this, but I can just imagine how uncomfortable this conversation has to be. What kind of advice would you give somebody who might be uncomfortable having this conversation?
I totally understand. And you know what? Not everyone is meant to be the advocate at your company for it, but you have to put yourself first. And if it's interfering with your life, your symptoms, you have to speak up. Now, speaking up, is it a change in your workplace environment, or it's getting medical help or mental health, or, what lifestyle changes? It's to your benefit and other people's benefit to do so. But I 1000% understand why you wouldn't want to. People are worried about being stigmatized, being labeled as older, and that doesn't always bode well for women.
That's fair. And especially when the majority, I wouldn't say the majority, but a lot of women end up reporting to men, and they're very uncomfortable having that conversation. Who is a person, or what advice do you give to somebody stuck in that situation? Like, for example, I can guarantee you, if we had anybody going through this right now, they wouldn't be banging down my door begging to talk to me about this. So what kind of advice would you give them of like, who can they turn to? What are some good avenues for support, like you're talking about?
The avenues don't always have to be in the workplace. I think you also need to educate yourself what's going on in your body, and really define what your needs are. So when you do go, if that person that you report to, or the only person, the owner of your firm is a male, that you can say, these are what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what I need, right? I can't expect a man to understand all my physical symptoms, right? I'm sure men in my position have always been supportive. They just don't know. They can't relate. So I think you have to educate yourself. There's a variety of ways to educate yourself. There's the Menopause Society in the US. There are apps called Perry. We are building, for my passion project for everybody, I am building out an aggregation of resources to be able to point you in the right direction, along with an AI capability to educate yourself. You need to educate yourself on what's going on with your body. You need to ask questions, which, by the way, I understand how hard it is because, you know, any doctor will tell you now that they only got 30 minutes of menopause training in medical school. And I think we treat menopause as something that's just, okay, it's the end of your reproductive years. Yes, you have hot flashes. But untreated menopause and you're symptomatic can lead to very, very serious health consequences. There is a 50% uptick in heart attacks and strokes. It is one of the leading cause Alzheimer's and dementia. So, you know, these are not, is menopause a medical issue? No, but it's a health issue that can lead to serious health issues. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I have one more question, if that's okay, because I'm actually quite interested in that. So
I love interaction.
So what I find is the longer women are in the workforce, it's normally because they're incredibly ambitious, they're very talented, and they're very successful. What kind of advice do you give to somebody who's used to being very successful, very proactive, always on it, and then, you know, they're now menopause is kind of like a barrier in their way. It's a new obstacle. What do you say to them on how to help cope with that? I know you said educate yourself, but you went through this early on. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who's going into this in their 50s and 60s, and they're used to being at the top of their game, but now they've got an obstacle that they're not used to fighting with? What do you say to something like that?
Well, for somebody on that level who's highly successful, highly motivated, you know, don't let menopause stop you. You take it over like you did your career and get the resources and demand the resources and go get them. You know, work with your company, or if it's your own company, you know, try to come up. What do you need? Come from the perspective of what you need.
Love it.
So Shannon, now that we're talking about these type of things related to male, actually there's a question in terms of, you know, how can we encourage more open conversations about menopause at work, like any activities, any forums, something that we can do at work, especially in a especially in a male dominated industries. Nothing against men, Zia, but just related to that, you know, like how can we encourage also male to be part of it and to feel like it's also not responsibility, but they can contribute to it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think being an inclusive environment and, you know, speaking your mind, being honest, being forthright. And see, you tell me how you feel about this. It's not that men don't want to know. It's just they would never think to ask, right? Again, it doesn't really happen to them the way it happens to women. Yeah. So, but you have women in your life, you have mothers, you have friends, you have colleagues, you have a spouse, maybe, you know, who will all, rest assured, if they live long enough, will go through menopause. Yep. The difference is they will have varying degrees of symptoms. They may not ever have a symptom. They could have every symptom, right? It's just, it's impossible to tell. But I think having that open dialogue and normalizing a conversation that is just a natural part of life. Do you want to sit down and like Monday morning huddle and talk about menopause? No. But do you want to have a lunch and learn about what is actually happening to somebody's body in ways that we can like talk, and what's going to be valuable with company resources and company time to support our employees? You know, how can we be a great place to work and attract these women who are like high powered, highly motivated, killing it? What do we offer them?
And I 100% agree with you. And I think and I'm trying to say this as nicely as possible without coming off like a bad guy. I think there's also a sliding scale of involvement with the productivity of that person. And I don't just put this on menopause. I'll put this on any external non-work related factor. The more you're contributing to the company, I think the more the company is willing to do for you. I know one person at our company had a child like about 6 months ago. And I remember proactively, I reached out to that person. I said, listen, I don't know what your plans are post-kid, but we don't want to lose you. We want to keep you here. We'll work with you. Whatever you need, let us know, because you're a vital part of what we do here. Right. So I think, and that person knows who she is. Her baby may or may not be talking in the middle of this podcast now. I don't know. But it's one of those things where I think you're onto something about having that conversation. And sometimes not everybody is like, look, I have 2 sisters, I've got 3 aunts, I've got 9 cousins that are all. I'm like, I've been dealing with different circumstances my whole life, and I've gone through the menopause thing. I saw my mom go through it, and I saw like what it did to her. Like it was awful.
Yeah.
So like the male mind definitely works a little bit differently, and we try to always solve a problem that sometimes doesn't need to be solved because it can't be solved.
It's the way estrogen works in your brain, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where I would tell any employer, like male employer, like, like a lot of our staff is female. I'd say more of our staff is female than male. Mm-hmm. It's just, you as a man, you have to be able to be open to conversations, just sometimes to listen.
Yes.
And then to ask how you can help instead of telling them what they need, just to ask them, how can I help you get to that point? And I think a lot of men just try to fix things for them. They're like, no, sometimes just take a step back, see what it is that they need. How can you help them?
That's exactly it. It's just listening, not asking you to fix it. I mean, if you can, great, and please do. But just hearing that person and hearing what they're struggling with and saying, I hear you, I respect it. Can I do anything? If I can do anything, I will do something. But just, without judgment, without, any negative connotations. I think that's enormously helpful to listen and not brush somebody off. I think one of the biggest concerns emotionally is to being just dismissed.
Yep, I agree.
And women, I'm saying this is very general. I'm sure I get comments about this, but we like to talk about things because it helps us process. Mm-hmm. Women are much more talkers. It helps us process what we're feeling and intellectually and sharing because we get other resources from that.
Right.
So Shannon, talking about, you also came from a recruiter company, which is really important to related to the things that we do. So what role do managers and HR professionals play in creating a menopause friendly workplace? Like, do they should receive any training and specific about that? They should be mindful about it, or how can actually HR help with this?
I think education and getting training is always a positive, right? It's, understanding what exactly is menopause, other than the broad things, is the end of your reproductive years, understanding the symptoms that could potentially affect your workforce, I think is very valuable. There are there's menopause training and certifications for a menopause friendly workplace, which gives you a lot of resources into creating policies, but maximizing benefits, but also for HR. And I come across this, and I've done a lot of reading on this, particularly with bigger firms, that people don't know that they actually have a benefit that could potentially help them. Like telehealth or a mental health or, and Zay, we were talking about this beforehand, lifestyle, things that do with lifestyle, like gym memberships, mm-hmm. Coaching. Coaching is very, very helpful. I think there's been quite a few studies now about cognitive behavioral therapy and dealing with symptoms, in the fact that you reframe what your symptoms, how they're affecting you. Doesn't mean they're not affecting you, but you're refraining how you're reacting to them.
We have here a lot of questions, very interesting and funny, but okay, let's start with this one. I'm a little bit afraid to face that moment. What's the weirdest menopause symptom you have heard or experienced?
There's so many. The weird, we always hear about the top 5: hot flashes, low libido, concentration, sleeplessness. But the weird ones I was talking beforehand, the electric shocks that go through your body randomly, and all of a sudden you're just like that. Itchy ears, that's a big one. Burning tongue. I had one where I was constantly smelling smoke, and I would be someplace and going, what is that? Who's smoking here? That was a weird one. And that's your brain. Estrogen, you have so many estrogen receptors in your brain, and it affects every aspect of your brain. For a female, for men, it's very, it's localized. You have receptors, so you just don't have as many. And it's it's interesting if you think about it from a step back and saying the smell of smoke. Well, that's, that's that part of my brain that's kind of got affected from, the lack of estrogen. But yeah, that was one of them.
Oh my God. I don't want that moment yet.
Don't get scared, because I think to be educated, knowing that could be a sign of perimenopause or you're in menopause, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. But if you do, you know what it is. And I think education and awareness is power.
Yeah, like you said, and it helps to be prepared, for that moment.
Exactly. And then you're not going to be surprised. And then you're not, I think the emotional aspect and the anxiety, even though anxiety can be affected by, your diminishing hormones, I think anxiety comes from not knowing.
I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be like, hey, I remember Shannon told me this. I'm going to be relaxed. It's normal.
I'm going to be relaxed. Yeah. I'm going to know how to talk to my doctor. I'm going to talk about my treatment options, and I'm going to talk about my lifestyle options. I'm going to do what's best for me and my body.
Great. This one. If there were a menopause survival kit at work, what would we have to be in it? Like,
ooh,
M&Ms.
For the women out there who've gone through perimenopause and menopause, and you girls will know this because it's very similar to PMS. When you're very irritated, that's just all the time. Okay. You go for the period time, that's just all the time. So, things that make women happy. Yeah, M&M's, so that made you happy and takes the it's called menopause rage, and it's real. Let me just be clear, it's real. So something that helps with that, in all joking aside, a fan, the optionality to have a fan or a cooling device, or maybe, a wearable device that hits your pressure points, that cools down your body when you need it. What else could be helpful? The survival kit at work, layers of clothes, breathable fabric. Let's not get crazy with the polyester, because that's not a breathable fabric. You won't be happy. Gosh, a nap room. That would be amazing.
Mm.
I don't nothing. Need to go to menopause to want that.
I'm sorry?
I don't need to go to menopause to want to have a nap room.
I mean, I think everybody would be on board for the nap room, that you could nice, dark, cold room that you could spend 15, 20 minutes in. Win for everyone.
Speaking my language.
Coffee.
Okay. I'm going to do my last, and then I give the turn to Aleja. So, what's one word that comes to mind when you hear menopause at work? One word.
For me?
Yeah.
Empowerment. We keep talking about the negative aspects of the seemingly negative, just because there are, physical symptoms and mental symptoms that, can impede the things that you want to do. But one of the greatest things about menopause is you kind of just don't care anymore. You've lost that ability to be, just, I don't want to use the wrong words. It's not motherly or trying to take care of somebody else. It's a definite, the ladies out there will understand this who've gone through it. It's a definitive shift of, let's say I made a mistake. Honestly, I'm going to forget about it 30 seconds later, and I'm going to move on. Whereas maybe in my younger years, I would have thought about it over and over and over again. And how do I do it differently? But I think it's, I think we should use positive terminology. Like, it is empowering. Like, I'm moving to another stage of my life. Yes, there's maybe some rough points, and yes, some things I need to get used to. And maybe I need to, make some adjustments in my life. But overall, it's not a bad time.
I love that word. Like, sure, one of my favorites.
Yep. I think the more and more we talk about this, guys, I think by the time you guys hit menopause, and maybe there will be no symptoms, but I think you'll feel pretty empowered. You have a lot of life experience behind you. You have a lot more life to live, and you have a lot more to give and receive. Exactly.
Exactly. She is part of the conversation, ladies. I mean, I'm so sorry. So Shannon,
She's the
let's
wisest woman here.
yeah. Shannon, so let's talk about love for everybody. I know that's also something that you can talk about. How did you create this passion project? Is it also related to menopause? Is it completely different? What is it about?
No, it's completely related to menopause. So it is something I've been working on for a few months now. And what really came about it was there's so much piecemeal information everywhere. Like we have a lot of Instagram influencers, like, and they're all great. Like, Mary Claire Haver and others like her trying to educate women on hormonal therapy and, the pros and cons. And there's also nutritionists and there's also, workout influencers and things like, but this just is very piecemeal. And I wanted to put something together. And when you're in when you're in the throes of perimenopause and menopause, adding more to the fire and let me keeping track of more is just not a great idea. So I wanted to aggregate things, but I also want to help educate women. I think that's, again, we've been talking about this the whole time in different ways, but I think understanding what's happening to your body, how your body works, and what is happening to your body, and how you move forward with that is very empowering. I want to educate the public on, not just women, but the public on that. So I am building out AI agent to facilitate that. What we're doing is utilizing the world's medical research, and we're creating another knowledge base specifically to perimenopause and menopause and those related health issues. And we want to take that, educate, but also to send you on the way of whatever you're asking, that this product could be helpful, that we've curated, or this provider, whether that's an MD, like a gynecologist, or maybe you need an endocrinologist or whatever ologist that you may need, but maybe you need a nutritionist, maybe you need a coach, maybe you need mental health, and just aggregate people who understand this stage of life or whose specialty is this stage of life. So that's what we're doing at Forever Betty.
So I
So
have
Shannon, oh sorry,
so I have a
goes you.
question. I have a
Yes.
question
Go
for
go.
that. And I think a lot of the guys are gonna appreciate this, hopefully. So, what advice do you have for the men who have a menopausal person in their life that can help them? Because remember, I know you guys are going through a lot, but as I told my wife when she was pregnant, babe, you have no idea what I had to deal with. And she obviously didn't. She thought she didn't find it as funny as I did. But what advice do you give to maybe a husband of a menopausal? You said low libido, and if that can really put a rift in a marriage when that's not happening.
Yeah.
With the rage you speak of.
Yes.
Right. So a lot of times the person you love most is the one who's getting raged on the hardest, or a random person driving on 95, because we know how those people are too. But what advice do you give to the men out there who have a menopausal person in their life and how they can best cope with and help get you through it?
I mean, I think to educate yourself, and maybe it's a tool like Forever Betty, or reading, the Menopause Society, or, getting a little education for yourself. And you're right, intimacy. So libido, not just, but that's how we connect, right? How married couples connect, or intimate relationships connect, is sexually. Understanding what is happening and maybe why your partner had, besides the physical, like the desire of libido, there's also a physical, more than likely, and women do not like to talk about this at all, the physical symptom of having your tissue thin and sex is very painful, or you have an uptick in UTIs, and that is because of the loss of estrogen. So having that conversation, you can do localized, just to give you some, anybody who's listening out there, you can do localized estrogen therapy, which is not systemic. It will not go through, very low levels go through your body. But you can also do hydration ovals to be helpful with that. But just having open and honest conversations. And I think one of the most important things is relaying to your partner, I'm not going anywhere. I know you don't like me right now, and you probably don't like anybody right now, but I am behind you and I support you. And I want to hold your hand through this. I think the fear of being abandoned. You already feel like you're abandoned by your own body and mind, but being physically abandoned, and that if you don't do X, this means X, right? If I'm not having sex with my husband, he's going to go find somebody else, or my partner.
So, Shannon, we have a similar question on Instagram as well. This is from Juan Pablo. So, it's similar like Zia said. It's kind of like, what is the best way as a man to support or give the tools so that my partner feels supported from home and that is it doesn't affect her work? So, in terms of tools, I think we can. Do you have any books, any podcasts, any forums that
Oh,
actually can help
oh my
this,
gosh.
especially for Juan Pablo?
Mary Claire Haver is a great doctor to follow. I mean, she's very much evidence-based. So I think that goes a long way with people. There is, oh gosh, what's her name? You Are Not Broken, which is Kelly Casperson. Great book. There's one book, and I'm forgetting the name, which I can text everybody. This is a great book on how your body works. Just give you an overview and step by step, clinical and funny all at the same time. Men don't really think, by the way, why would you? We have there's a lot going on with our system. And most men want to keep it high level. We're going to keep it high level. We're not going to get into the weeds. But, but there's some really great books out there now. But I would really suggest You Are Not Broken is a very good one. And The New Menopause is a good one too, if you just want to do that. And you can follow them on social. They're very, very, very active.
Awesome.
There's also the Menopause Society. That's a good one.
So, Shannon, just one more question, because we're obviously talking about how men sometimes they need support and everything, and sometimes they don't want to talk about it. What about women that don't really want to talk about menopause, or women that are kind of like, I don't want to talk about the topic. It doesn't happen to me, or is like, I don't want to. So, how can we actually encourage women to be advocates of this topic? Because there are women really don't care. So, how can we do that?
I think just encourage the women who can talk about it, who want to talk about it. I don't think forcing somebody who doesn't want to talk about it is going to do any good, right? They'll come around, or they'll ask questions, or be there for when they're ready, if they're ever ready. I noticed a very big difference from the time, I went through menopause, but, you have to consider I was 39 and none of my friends were going through it. I had zero medical help. And now I'm finding there's support groups, like in-person support groups around your community. So I think looking for community help, which is something we're going to aggregate as well at Forever Betty, to aggregate women support groups around the country. I think from a work perspective, I think somebody to be, the advocate, or, the one who puts together the group, nominating somebody like that, and people can join as they feel comfortable joining. But, if somebody doesn't want to talk about it, they're not going to talk about it. I mean, I would encourage you, because it helps everybody and it will help you, and it normalizes it. It normalizes something that's actually normal. Menopause is, I like how Mary Claire Haver said this. It's normal to go through menopause. It doesn't mean that it's okay to suffer through it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's true. I have here a question, and I like it. It comes from a team member. So, how can remote or hybrid workplaces be more mindful of menopause-related challenges given the physical separation?
Wait, repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Other question?
Yeah.
Okay. How can remote or hybrid workplaces be more mindful of menopause-related challenges given the physical separation?
Oh, yeah. So I think, how can you be more mindful? I would just, make it known that you have open door policies. But I also, in terms of benefits or things you offer your employees, you can make your benefits list and provide resources. Hey, if you're going through menopause and maybe never have the conversation, you don't be free. These are things in your area that could be helpful. These are websites and resources or telehealth resources that could be very helpful to you. But also make sure that people know that you have an open door policy and you can come to me with anything.
And this one that I like it too because we are younger. So, how can younger employees who haven't yet experienced menopause be supportive allies in creating a more inclusive environment?
I love that question. Everyone wants to feel like they belong.
Mhm.
It's not that you have to treat anybody any differently, but if somebody is breaking into a hot flash in front of you,
Mhm.
you know, normalize it. Ask it, I can do anything. You don't have to ignore it. Can I do anything for you? Are you okay?
Hmm. And it happens too. I told you, like, not in the workplace also. Like, for example, my mom, or like in our
Hmm.
family, it happens all the time. So
Yep.
it's good to have like that empathy to understand like what's going on with them. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Not to like, you're staring at them while you have sweat pouring down, or they've perspired through their clothing.
Mhm.
Can I get you anything?
Hmm.
Can I run to the store for you?
It's
Just being,
very.
a thoughtful human being goes a long way.
Yep. Yep. So, Gabby, do we have one more question, I think? And then I'll do my final if I'm not wrong, or I think I saw it.
I can ask a last one if you want.
Yeah, we have the
Okay.
one. Yeah, the last
Okay. Have you seen any cultural or regional differences in how menopause is perceived or addressed in the workplace? Like if
Have I seen differences how people treat menopause in the workplace?
like yeah, but like in cultural or regional differences, or is like the same with all the women?
It's so funny since I started Forever Betty and we've been building our community, and we actually have a lot of people, an
Hmm.
odd amount, overseas. Um, Women have the same concerns globally. The world is flat. We are human beings, and the same perceptions we have in the US are very prominent in UK, Australia, South America. I think the biggest difference, I think one of the bigger questions is like, what do you use for therapy? And menopause HRT therapy has a different cost, and I think those are barriers. So in the US, it depends on if your benefit plan includes HRT therapy, is whether insurance is going to cover it or not, or whatever particular plan you have. Or if you don't have insurance, what can you do? If you choose to go on HRT, you may never go on HRT. Doesn't mean you have to get relief. But in places like Australia, and they have national health systems, and certain types of therapies aren't covered, so they become very expensive. So the barrier to getting care is, I'd say that's a big topic of conversation.
For another webinar.
we
Let's take
Yeah.
that
So
topic.
get
can
ready,
we can talk
Shannon.
about it.
So Shannon, we've been talking a lot about menopause this, menopause that. What is the cool thing about menopause? What would you say is
Well, you
amazing?
don't have a monthly bill. That's amazing.
Okay.
Sorry, Zia, but the ladies are talking now too. But you listen in because you'll learn a lot.
So what you're telling me is OnFlow does not show up anymore.
OnFlow does not show up anymore. You don't. You're not dropping by an aisle at the store. I haven't visited that aisle in obviously a decade. So that's good. You don't have those monthly, PMS symptoms. I don't have anymore. I'm pretty good there. But again, it's just, I think being in menopause, as we were talking beforehand, I think before we launched that, like middle age is actually 35, according to math and life expectancy. And I got really mad when somebody called me middle aged when I was 35. I was like, I am killing it. I am not middle aged. But apparently I am, because I may not live to 110. But I think you can either look at it negatively or positively. Like at this age, it's a reminder. Menopause is a reminder. Middle age, upper middle age is a reminder to think about your life and live with intent. How do I want to spend my time here while I'm still here? And what do I want to focus on? What do I want to accomplish? How do I want to feel? I think that's very empowering. And I find myself doing that more and more and more. And you know, menopause has been a big one, been a big cause, not cause, but an effect,
Yep.
an
No,
after
and I think
effect.
And as a personal, like comment, I think that's what makes us women. It's part of the life, it's part of the process, and that's the beauty of it as well. You have to go through it, and it's okay. Like when Sia was saying, yeah, it was my baby, like going through maternity also, like
Yeah.
we were prepared, but it's beauty of it, is a part of it. So now, understanding that there's actually tools out there, the books out there, the forum there, the for everybody, the love for everybody is
Hmm.
there as well. So
Right.
it's
But think
actually very
about it this
cool.
way. It's very cool. But think about it from this perspective. We never used to talk about pregnancy in the
Yeah.
workplace.
And
Between
actually, we had
me,
a question related to, this is going to be very specific, Z, and I'm sorry, but it's a question related to about menstrual challenges. Like, does that something that you covered on your forum, Shannon, or maybe that is there any way that women that actually are experiencing that can feel connected to some books, podcasts, or Love for Everybody as well?
yeah, for everybody as well. But are we talking about like still menstruating and the challenges? And yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, I've got to pull this up because I came across a couple people that I thought they were doing, women who are in their early 30s and just changing the way we think about menstruation. By the way, there's so much research going on. There's actually a study going on the effects of I'm sorry, Zia, I really am. And I'm sorry, guys out there, but this is really cool. We're so into peptides and anti-aging, but menstruation blood and that being a big stem cell research, basically. And I mean, how cool is that? So this, you know, historically, that time of month has been considered, taboo, not to be talked about, something maybe a little dirty-esque. Um, and it's the giver of life. And it could change somebody else's life. I mean, we keep going to this therapy, like that's a big perception change, don't we think? You know, how cool this system is, and for all the women out there, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, no, thank you, Shannon. And yeah, we never get to talk about pregnancy, but in another webinar. So, Shannon, prepare yourself for like 5 more
Oh,
coming soon.
I love it. I love it. I
Cannot
mean,
wait for that one.
but you've
Yeah,
experienced some of that, and just I think the more that we talk about, from puberty to, the end of life. And I think these are important conversations to have. And I think
correct.
there's different
Yeah.
stages to life, and they're all great, and they all have challenges, and they're all great at the same time. So it's just
Yep.
you can choose how to look at it. It doesn't mean that you don't have symptoms that are interfering with your life, and you should address those, and you should have support with that. 1000%.
And it is good that we're actually open to talk about these, related in the workplace, and we're opening these, live videos that we're having right now. Shannon, thank you so much today for,
Thank you.
your knowledge and everything. Don't forget to follow Shannon as well on LinkedIn. She's as Shannon Lewis, and I'm going to share the Love for Everybody website on our social media channel so they can go ahead and check it out. So women and also
Please.
men, go and check it out because it's a really cool page. I already saw it. So, Shannon, thank you so much for being here, for your knowledge, for your guidance, and for actually being an advocate for these topics that are actually not taboo anymore. They're actually out there.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. Thank you, Gabi, for the amazing questions. And obviously, the people that are asking. And Sia, even though this was a little bit of comfortable, thank you so much for staying till the end of this webinar.
That means you are the best for doing that. And let me just add something. So if there are any questions, feel free to,
Yeah,
ask me on social media. If you want, menopause questions, Shannon at foreverbetty.com. I answer everything myself. So feel free to reach out and,
awesome.
confidentially too. I'm the only person who's going to see it. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been great. And thank you for being open to the conversation.
Of course.
I love it.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, guys,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for joining. We're going to have another podcast coming soon as well, so stay tuned on our YouTube channel and all social media channel. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, guys. Till the
Thank
next
you.
time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.